the Iranian regime Hamas commander Saleh al-Aruri eliminated in Lebanon, and a major explosion in Karmine, Iran, you'll be surprised to learn who's behind this latest atrocity. Join us on Our Middle East. Well, it's great to have you, two dear friends, Iranian Brits, Vahid Beheshti, Mattie Heaven. Great to have you here. We worked together before in London. There are major developments happening here. And Vahid, before we went on the air, you know, you're really exposing and revealing, I would call them strategic secrets that many people just don't know about. Just even hours before we sit here in the studio, a major blast at the commemoration of the death of Qasem Soleimani, who was the head of the IRGC, major operative leader of the Iranian regime, and the explosion, you're saying, was a regime action itself.
Exactly. Thank you for having me here. And as I said, if you look at the nature of this explosion, using civilians as a human shield, that's exactly the fingerprint of the Iranian regime.
I mean, the regime is killing its own people in order to distract the world from what the regime is in a race to finish its desire for nuclear supremacy and basically have a bomb. And that sort of characterizes everything the regime has been doing since October the 7th and even before.
So there's two reasons I can see here for this, I would say, suicide. And sometimes from the fear of they come after you and killing you, you committed suicide. That's what I call it. So from one side, they needed something big to continue the process of demonization of Israel, especially after two great attacks. Of course, the Israeli government didn't take any responsibility for Saleh al-Aruri targeted operation, and Razi Mousavi, don't forget, Razi Mousavi last week in Syria. He was the second man after Qasem Soleimani, I call it. I think the leader of Quds force is the cover for, it is the cover for Razi Mousavi. So Israel found out and targeted exactly. Look, Razi Mousavi has been targeted 25 minutes after he left his office and 20 minutes before his family arrived home. So no one even had a scratch. So targeted. And Saleh al-Aruri last night, after this successful targeted operation, they needed something big to demonize Israel and say, look, they're all not targeted. They target civilians. And from the other side, look who they killed. As you mentioned, exactly, their own people, the people who participate in fourth anniversary of terrorist Qasem Soleimani, they were the people of IRGC, Basij, and the people pro-regime. They killed them. Why? Because the people of pro-regime, they lost their motivation because of constant miscalculation and the mistake of the regime. They needed something big to motivate them in order to support the regime. They killed their own people to give them motivation. Over 100 people, as far as I understand, and so far about 200 people injured. They needed something big. And now look at the reaction after this massive explosion. Putin sent condolence to Khamenei. Erdogan from Turkey sent condolence to Khamenei. And they, of course, they're going to make a big scene out of this. So for their to deviate the world attention from Iran and from their mistakes and motivate their own people.
Now, this is completely foreign thinking to the Western mind, as Mattie and I were talking about before we went on the air. I mean, the Western mind cannot conceive of what appears to be what our friend Dr. Harold Rode has always called classic modern Islamic warfare, where actually the regime will actually kill its own people in order to generate sympathy for the regime and allow it to continue to demonize and engage in deception and disinformation and to try to manipulate and weaponize world opinion against its enemies.
Exactly. And this is Islam is fascist. They do anything. The life of people they don't value the life of people at all. Look, in democratic democratic countries, we do anything to even save one life. So see the government of Israel paying anything, do anything to save one hostage's life. But there, they think, okay, we kill these people, they go to heaven because we kill them for our own goal. Our goal is sacred. So that's how they think. And they do anything. They don't hesitate to kill as many as they can for their own goal and to legitimize, because they lost all the legitimacy. The government of Iran, that's why last night I said this in Knesset and I emphasized on that.
In the Knesset, when we were all in the Knesset together, exactly. In this, it was actually a caucus of what's called a victory caucus that had been called together by our friends at the Middle East Forum about how do you create a perception of not only physical victory, but the greater perception of victory. And in that connection, can we not argue that there are many opposition operatives in Iran that were inspired by, the reports that Israel assassinated these two major IRGC commanders? Would that not have motivated many opposition, whether it's Mujahideen al-Khalq or whether it was the Turkomans or the Baluchis or others that would want to continue the momentum and hit the regime at such a sensitive point?
I'm not just talking about the different groups of opposition. I'm talking about the whole people of Iran. I'm talking about at least more than 85% of the population who they are thirsty for freedom and democracy, and they counting the second to overthrow this regime, and they do anything. They see this great operation by Israel. Of course, it gives them great motivation, great energy to uprise again. You see, they tried many times, especially since 2009, the people of Iran, they had many uprisings, but because of the level of brutality of this regime and the level of barbarism which we all experienced on October the 7th, they haven't been successful yet. But they need, as I said last night, they need a little bit support from Israel, from the Western country, to be successful and finish the job for us inside the country. Hit the head of octopus, as you mentioned 15 years ago, inside the country. We need the great military of 80 million people of Iran to hit the head of octopus inside of Iran. They need a little bit support. This support could be target the IRGC site, as I said last night, inside of Iran. Target nuclear sites of Iranian regime inside of Iran. High officials, the head of IRGC. Imagine people of Iran wake up and they see they hear the assassination, the news of assassination of Hossein Salami. They're going to be energized. You injected great energy inside the society of Iran.
Vahid and Mattie, there's been an ongoing disagreement about how directly involved the Iranian regime, IRGC, was in the atrocities of October the 7th. The United States issued official statements that they had no evidence of direct involvement. There's been other opinions that clearly the command center in Beirut, that is a joint command center of Hezbollah, Hamas-Iran, they were going back and forth before October 7th, after October 7th. But there are positions that say that Iran didn't know exactly the date, or they knew about. What is your both of your sense about the Iranian regime direction, supply, monitoring of the October 7th massacres?
And let Mattie first speak.
We all know this is a fact that Hamas only exists because of the Iranian regime. They get the main source and funding from. Time and time again, just even few days, a week before, Khamenei's speech has always been about elimination of Israel. So these are the facts. that nobody can deny. They are constantly talking and getting their proxies, how they can eliminate Israel. They are saying even that to the point that they said if they get a nuclear weapon, the first thing they would do is use it against Israel. They are not shy about giving information to the rest of the world about their action and with their proxies that what doing. It's the fact that we need to wake up in the West what we're dealing with. Earlier on when we talked about is that why the Iranian regime is a step ahead, because their mind is so devious. You are a democratic country. You want to talk about fair game. You want to be talking about diplomacy, but you're dealing with a regime that they don't understand that language. It's like playing a chess with a gorilla. The first thing they would do is just come and throw the game in a different direction. You just cannot negotiate with these people. And for 44 years, that's been happening. The Western countries have been trying to say maybe they can change their behavior. Their behavior has not only changed, it's got worse as time goes. And yes, I do believe, and the evidence has stated that Iranian regime is behind it. Obviously, they now know not going to be publicly confessing to it. You can see how the way they communicate is going to change, because one side, they need to keep their proxies happy, and second, they don't want to show the world that it is them because they attack and they will be targeted. Because internally, inside of Iran, they don't have any legitimacy. They're in virtual collapse. The only reason they exist is that the international community, unfortunately, Dan, is keep giving them legitimacy. As you know, one of the campaigns that we've been doing in UK is to call the UK government to prescribe Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, because they got free access, come to UK, use Islamic centers, use diplomatic channels, freely bringing their money laundering, setting up mosques around Europe, UK, and what they do, they radicalize people. So you got one war that you're fighting in the front in Israel. The second war that you're fighting is about the way they are radicalizing these extremist ideology around the world. So there are so many levels of how the Iranian regime is operating. But when we talk about, the people of Iran, I think we need to give them hope, Dan. We need to, every time there's an uprising, they need to know that the West, outside people, are hearing their voice. And we had a huge movement on women life freedom. Unfortunately, after 12 months, we saw that instead of having condemned the regime, the Raisi was invited in United Nations just 2 weeks before the 7th of October.
Ibrahim Raisi, the Prime Minister of...
And Antonio Guterres...
President of Iran.
And Antonio Guterres, gave him a platform in United Nations, shook his hand. This is a man who ordered the execution of over 30,000 people in 1988. He's known as a butcher of Iran. So there is something wrong when he's invited to come to United Nations and give his anti-West, anti-Israel, had a Qasem Soleimani picture in his hand, and same time the United Nations, who condemns Israel for their action and saying that there needs to be a ceasefire. Where were the United Nations when the people of Iran been asking for their freedom, and inviting the butcher of Iran to give them platform? There is something that needs to be said about the actions of some of the UN, how they go about doing things.
It's an irony because the American administration, particularly the Obama administration, had led the Western alliance in legitimizing the Iranian regime while delegitimizing ISIS and Al-Qaeda as being what they thought was the head of the snake. And what you guys have been saying for a long, long time as leading Iranian opposition activists is that, hey guys, wait a second. If 80 million Iranian people understand that the regime is the head of the octopus, that the regime is the source of all or the vast majority of international subversion and terror, why is the outside world legitimizing the very regime that's killing its own people and has no legitimacy about its own people?
Exactly.
One of the famous slogans people have been saying in the last 12 months, no to Gaza, no to Lebanon, I'll die for Iran. Because people of Iran know that their money, that while they're starving under 70% of the population on the level of poverty, their money is being spent on the grounds creating these what we saw now in Gaza, 500 kilometers of underground that they've been created. So they know that then people, the money that should go for the people of Iran, because Iran is a rich country. They are fifth richest country in oil, second in gas, but that money is being used for their proxies. And people of Iran know this. They understand. They don't have anything more to lose because they don't even have basic rights, not just human rights. They don't even have basic life. They don't even have clean water. The Iranian regime has intentionally polluted waters in areas where they get sick so that they actually either die or flee the country. Khamenei said, if they have 5 million population in Iran and the rest of the Iranians who are not happy with the current situation to leave, they are very happy. They don't care. That means that even Khamenei confessed that they don't care about the 80 million population who, if they try to uprise, that means they could get rid of them. The other fact I want to mention, Dan, is about their hostage-taking policy that has been very successful for the last 44 years. Every time there's been a situation with the cases that, for example, the case in UK or recently in US, that they want to attack Iran, they have hostages saying, no, we have hostages and you don't want us to kill your hostages, so you need to, just step back. And I could see that time and time again. When Vahid was on his hunger strike, we were told one of the reasons that the UK government will not prescribe IRGC is because of the US administration. They didn't want the hostages be under risk because they needed US to be that point of UK to be the point of communication, which is absolutely not true. It's not the case, but they use the hostages in order for the democratic countries to leverage that. As we saw that they paid £6 billion exchange of 5 hostages and also released their own 5 hostages from US, and 3 of them right now live in UK. That does not give a good message to people of Iran. They feel like, why the Western countries are still supporting this regime? Why a US Biden administration paid £6 billion? And 2 weeks later, what did happen? 7th of October happened. What message is it giving to the regime and all these proxies, terrorists? Is that it is okay for you to take hostages because that's the way you can make money. And one thing that we need to be so aware, and Israel needs to understand, that you cannot take one step back, because if you take one step back, they'll take 10 steps forward. Mm-hmm. The only language they know is pressure, because that's what they would do. They leverage the hostages in order to say, you need to slow down or you need to cease fire because we have the hostages. But we know that they've never changed their behavior, and this hostage-taking policy, this is the Iranian regime policy that has worked for them. That's the way they survived.
It seems that the Iranian regime-Hamas relationship took a very, very sharp turn in 2014, where there were 3 boys kidnapped in the Gush Etzion area, and it was revealed that the Hamas, with Iranian regime help, had dug all of these tunnels. And we knew this 10 years ago, and still Israel sort of, it seemed, fell asleep at the wheel. And it never understood the massive upgrade in Hamas strategic capabilities, in their planning capabilities, in their offensive capabilities, in their weapons supply. And all of this came from their Iranian mentors. We know that they were flying into Iran, meeting with Qasem Soleimani at that time. And the reports that we were hearing is that Qasem Soleimani basically said, listen, guys, you're not going to defeat the Jews on the classic battlefield. You've got to start thinking out of the box.
Exactly. Look, I'm just, let's start from here. As Mattie was explaining, just reminded me something. It was 18 years ago when the IRGC's agents, they attacked Sufis in Iran. So Sufis are most peaceful people. They sit in their corners, they meditate, they pray. They attack them, they destroy their temple. But after they destroyed their temple, I remember we were writing the news that night, publishing the news about it. It was about 1:30 in the morning. The Basijis and the IRGCs, they came to the street and they were shouting, we killed the Sufis, now we are going for the Zionists. And tomorrow morning they came to the airport, about 2,000 of them. They sat down, they said, we are going to go to Gaza. This was 18 years ago. So they start with the weakest to go there. The Iranian regime the Iranian regime plan in Gaza is not yesterday, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It's way before. They've been working on this plan for many years. That's why Khamenei, 3 days before October the 7th, in his speech, he says to the Arab countries, especially Saudi Arabia, he says, do not bet on the dead horse, called the Israeli dead horse. And then they put the countdown. You remember 3 years ago in the streets of Tehran, in the different streets of Iran for Israel. So it's been planned because they knew they are digging this tunnel under the schools, under the hospitals, under the kindergarten, using civilians as a human shield, because that's the only way they could bring Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East, on its knees. Because look, it's going to be very easy for Israel to carpet bomb Gaza. It's 2 hours and that's finished. Why it's make it too complicated? And he sent all his troops inside Gaza to go one by one after these terrorists and kill them to save lives. This is the tactic, this is strategy, and this is a principle of Israel government. But look at the other side. They use their own people. This is exactly what they've done today in Kerman, in Iran. Killed more than 100 people of their own and 200 people injured. To what? Because to continue demonizing the Israel for their goal. So we have two different culture, two different ideology. The other side, democratic system, respect human life and gives everything to save one life. The other side do not care at all, do not value human life. So what we can do in this very complicated situation?
How do you explain them? How do we explain Shiite messianism? In the West, it's an issue of great confusion of the Mahdi and the commitment of. We saw it more clearly with Ahmadinejad, who was a deeply religious man when he was mayor of Tehran and then the president of Iran. That according to Shiite eschatology, they have to destroy the world in order to bring the Mahdi from occultation and which is the messianic figure according to radical Shiism. Can you help us understand that, because it's foreign to Western thinking?
Look, Mahdiism is an ideology and is not just in Islam and the Iranian regime system. Is related and is connected to an ideology in Russia. It's called Katahanism. So these people, they believe in Iran, in Shia, the people who are in power. The 12th saint, Imam, which is called Mahdi, he hasn't died and he's alive and he's going to return. But they have to prepare the world for his appearance. So we have to create as much as corruption, death, mess for him to be, okay, this is the time now, I'm going to go and save the world. The exactly same mentality and ideology, it's in the Russia's government. They call it Katahanism. So they're waiting for the person whose name is Katahan. So, and this is not what I'm claiming and what I'm not saying. The brain of Putin, Alexander Dugin, the philosopher, of course you know him. You know him. He comes every other month, every other 2 months to Iran and talks about Katahanism. And he says Katahanism and Mahdiism are very connected. So we can work together. The Russian government and the Iranian government. Because we have the same goal. Maybe Katahan is the Mahdi. So they're going to appear together. So this is the ideology of Mahdis and Katahanis. So they do anything. They have to make as many as death. They have to shed blood as many as they can. They have to crop the world so to make it ready for the Mahdi to feel, okay, that the world is being really in the on the edge of catastrophe, and now I have to appear. This is their mentality.
What's extraordinary with regard to Russia is that the Iranian regime is targeting Russia as much as it's targeting everyone else. But at the same time, they seem to be bedfellows today. And one wonders, whether President Putin understands that the regime is targeting him whenever they feel it would be in their best interest to target Russia, which they look upon as a godless society from their standpoint.
But look, I don't see it that way. The Iranian regime, they don't care about the religion. They don't care about God. They don't care about any beliefs. Anybody, any group can help them to reach their goal they work with. What is their goal? To understand the goal of Iranian regime and his proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, and others, you have to see what is their foundation. Their foundation is Muslim Brotherhood. Read the books of the founders of Muslim Brotherhood, Hassan Banna, Sayyid Qutb. Clearly, they stated, in order to be able to create our own world, we have to destroy the order of the modern world, to be able to build our own world based on our ideology. And we all witnessed their ideology on October 7th.
How important a role does Israel play in fighting against the regime, undermining the regime, coalescing the Iranian people? We know we all met in London, and we heard Minister Gila Gamliel give a talk in the House of Lords twice, as a matter of fact, and it's known that her mandate as a government minister has been to work with the fighters for freedom in the Iranian opposition, such as yourself, and also those having invited Raza Pahlavi Jr. To Israel and working with people from the rainbow of the Iranian opposition without choosing one side or the other. How important is Israel as a country for the Iranian people and as a sort of the head of the spear in order to subvert the Iranian regime?
I think Israel can play a huge key role because we understand each other. We have the same enemy, as Vahid has been saying, that we understand what you're going through. The Iranian diaspora and people in Iran exactly know of what happened in October 7th. This happens regularly where girls, young people get raped, murdered, killed in that level of brutality.
That brutality that we saw here in the massacres happens in Iran as well by the regime?
For 44 years. This is
what... go through it one by one.
Just to let you know, after the 7th of October, over 160 young people have been executed. Innocent people. They are sports people. They are bloggers. Young people who want to live a normal life. They just don't want to be ruled by this dictatorship regime, and they come in this protest saying that they're chanting woman life freedom. So Israel can play a key role in one level, be a good ambassador, as what Gila did, going around and actually saying the problem that you are, as we know, Israel is facing and Iranian people facing is not limited just to this region. What we know that the same problem we're experiencing in UK, in Europe, even in America. After the 7th of October, we saw in the demonstrations, there are people in the street, although they come underneath the flag of Palestine or pro-Palestinians, there are people who are terrorist supporters, there are Hamas supporters. We cannot deny that Hamas is not a terrorist organization. It is. So we are now witnessing in democratic countries where people coming to protest and they are supporting the person who came and attacked these mobs who came and attacked Vahid. They were pro-Hamas supporters, had Ali Khamenei's photo and Qasem Soleimani's photo in streets of London, and they said, next we make sure that Khamenei will take over this country. These are all evidence, and it's been reported to counterterrorism office in London, that in the streets of London we are seeing that the problem that you're experiencing in Israel, the attack that happened in October 7, if the world, the international community, if the democratic countries don't support fully Israel, tomorrow it will be them, because they will not think twice about executing. They will not think twice about bringing their ideology to the rest of the world, which they already are doing. This is the thing with we need to wake other countries up that it's too late when it happens to you. You know, you cannot, we cannot wait. We need to learn from history, and it feels like nothing has been learned from history. We don't want another Holocaust to happen, that it's too late, that, it will come after you, and Hitler, it would be too late. What we try to say is that this is the time. Otherwise, there would be a time that you cannot control these people who are coming in masses in Europe country, and they're being brainwashed. They're using Islamic centers. They're radicalizing the youth, and they're using Israel as a tool to show that they're suppressing the Palestinians, which is not true. But they're giving them really wrong image. They're giving them false information. The information is being fed to them wrongly, so that they have this really radicalized ideology. And as you know, somebody who becomes a terrorist, first they need to be radicalized. So they are radicalizing armies of people in the Western world, that when they need to, they can actually use them and mobilize them as
Does it make sense for the West to engage in the same type of psychological and perception warfare in actually radicalizing, we said this yesterday actually in the Knesset, to radicalize in terms of perception the Iranian regime, because it seems to be legitimizing the Iranian regime? Maybe it's time to take a sharp turn to the ideological left, if you will, and radicalize in the media war, in the diplomacy war, the Iranian regime, to expose, to reveal, and to educate people as to what the regime is really about, instead of always being seen to legitimize the regime.
That is what we need to do. This is, we can see now, Vahid has got first-hand experiences of people being radicalized and coming now into the streets of London, and it's sometimes even hard to control that. This is the problem that we have. So I think this is one of the biggest war that we have, is countering the Islamic extremism that are taking place now.
The history of the people of Iran and the people of Israel goes way back, and you mentioned this in the Knesset as well. It was actually King Cyrus who was understood for his prophetic vision and his preparedness to save the Jewish people and allow them to worship again in the temple in the Beit HaMikdash, in the temple in Jerusalem under his under Persian control at that time. And so there really is such a deep history of shared freedom and the notion of this historical connection between both peoples.
Exactly. I've got a few comments about Israel's role in this situation. So Israel's role is not about Iranian people anymore. It's about the existence of Israel. We saw it, we experienced it after the October 7. And look at the situation in Israel. Look at how surrounded by Iranian proxies. Hamas from one side, Hezbollah from the other side. Look at the situation in Syria. Iranian regime turned Syria into the terror zone to distribute the terrorist forces armed military equipment, distribute them against Israel. Look at the situation in Red Sea. Houthis, they disrupt the global trade completely. And I can name it. So Israel fighting for their existence. Iranian people fighting for their existence. This is bring us together. And as you mentioned, yesterday before I come to Knesset, I was in Temple Mount. Few hours. It was the best moment so far I had. The experience, the vibration, I experienced that. And it takes me to the history, as you mentioned, of Iranian people. 2,000, nearly 600 years ago, I call it Prophet Cyrus the Great, freed the people of Israel from slavery and gave them opportunity to rebuild their temple, Jerusalem temple. We have a great culture, close culture together. we have lots of common interests, and most importantly, as I explained, common enemy, common war. So we have to work together, and Israel war, it's very important. If Israel has the ability and the capability to give Iranian a support that they need, and Iranian people on the ground, 80 million, great military you have on the ground, to finish the job with this great support from outside, to finish the job inside of Iran with the lowest price. This is the best solution that we can have. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow with these things, because the situation escalating very fast as you experience. Yeah. So sometimes people, from the fear of death, they committed suicide. I think Iranian regime, they made lots of mistakes, especially after the great operation of killing Qasem Soleimani. Because Qasem Soleimani, some people, they call it the second man of Iran. I call it the first man. Ali Khamenei wouldn't even drink the water without his approval. So that was a very great attack and hit, which happens. And they made lots of great mistakes after that. I think what they done today and continue, they're going to make mistake, and we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But we need this great military of Iranian inside of Iran, and we need the support from outside to finish them. And that's if we want the cure, permanent cure for Middle East, for the globe, and most importantly for Israel and for Iran, we need to first identify the root of the problems. See the things for what they are. The root of the problems is the head of octopus. So we need to target, and we have the solution.
When the Israelis public, almost 10 million people, realize, as you said, that they are being strangled every day by the Iranian regime in Syria, from the Iranian regime in Lebanon, from the Iranian regime in Gaza, and from Iranian cells also in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria. Exactly. That it's not that the octopus is there, 1,000 kilometers away. It's actually on 4 sides of Israel. It's already trying to strangle Israel. This is the perceptual shift that we talked about in the Knesset that has to be brought to the front of the Israeli discourse, is that the Iranian regime is Syria, Lebanon, Gaza, Judea and Samaria. It's right on its borders. It's not so far away.
Exactly. How long are we going to tolerate this? How long? How long are we going to lock ourselves in this vicious circle? We need to go to the root of the problem. Imagine you eradicate Hamas and you pull back from Gaza. What's going to happen? They're going to create another Hamas. 2005, this is what you did. You give the key, you handed over the key of Gaza to Palestinians. What they did to it, to great lands of Gaza, they hand over the key of Gaza to Iranian regime, to Hamas. And instead of using these great lands, they could turn it to another Singapore. What they done to it? Big tunnels under schools, under kindergartens, under hospitals. They turn it to terror zone against Israel. This is exactly happening in Syria, in Lebanon. And now, Red Sea. We need to wake up. We need to, of course, it's going to be bloody. It's going to be painful. It's not a cancer. We need a surgery.
You need a surgery for a root canal.
Exactly.
It's a root canal against the source of all poison, which is right now the regime in Tehran. And Vahid Beheshti, a good friend and really a struggler for freedom. You almost sacrificed your own life. Thank God you recovered. They tried to assassinate you. They didn't succeed. Mattie, a public official as well, an Iranian Brit, Mattie Heaven, both of you a great couple and a great a couple of warriors. Final thought.
Yeah, just final thought from what I mentioned yesterday. One of the key things that we need to be aware, the Iranian regime survives on creating division. This is very, very important that we need to be for the Israelis and other people to need to know that that's how they thrive. And this is the point that we need to let my message as a British Iranian, as from outside, I want to see that there is a unity between the supporters of Israel, the Israeli people, the Israeli community, and the Jewish community to fully support the government at this time, because we're dealing with a regime that thrives on division. And that is something that we cannot take any shortcuts on that. And that's till we can actually eradicate this head of octopus, everyone needs to be united together to make sure that my thought is that we will have a victorious ending.
I would like to make a short comment after
Sure.
Mattie said. What Mattie explained, because we experienced that. We are not coming from the word of theory. We're coming from the first-hand experience. How Iranian regime thrive on division, and this is how they survive. They create division between different group of opposition of Iranians for 44 years. Look what when I was on hunger strike, 50,000 Twitter account, they were attacking me. Oh, Vahid is with this group, Vahid is with that group, Vahid is the agent of that. And it takes people few months to realize who is Vahid Beheshti. They've been successful. They are expert on their creating division. And now, this is the warning to the people of Israel. They are focused on creating division inside of Israel. Thank God, so far it's been so good, but they have to be aware of this. They have to stand, as Mattie explained, strong and firm behind the government and behind the IDF of the military of Israel to win this battle against terrorism. That's the only solution we have.
Well, the unity is actually the word Achdut Yisrael. The unity of Israel is actually a watchword of the Jewish people in Zion. And in fact, the name of this program is Al-Shaq Al-Sadlana, our Middle East. Our Middle East is a Middle East for people of freedom, people in the Arab world, Jews, and all the great minorities, Druze and Turkmens and Baluchis and goodness gracious, Kurds, and people all around the Middle East. It's a Middle East of minorities, actually. And that's why we say it is our Middle East, but it's going to be a Middle East of security, stability, and prosperity. So we'll take it. Vahid Beheshti and Mattie Heaven will take your advice to heart and continue to enhance and strengthen our unity as all of us warriors for freedom and against authoritarianism and division. And that is all things Iranian regime. Inshallah, God willing, Bezrat Hashem, will emerge victorious against the forces of darkness and evil, and the unity will bring light to this region, the greater Middle East.
Exactly. Thank you for having us here. And just in the end, imagine what the great nation of Iran and Israel can build in Middle East and in the world without the Iranian regime and its proxies.
There we go.
Imagine.
Very well said. Thank you all very much for joining us, and we hope to get millions and millions of viewers to engage and experience this program and the lessons that you've helped us understand tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.